Welcome everyone to the 4th Annual Authors and Artists Festival Rewilding. For those of you just joining us, my name is Liz Burton-Crow and I'm your host from Nature Culture. Our sponsors include the New England Grassroots Environment Fund, Mary King, Kathy Crimmins, and Rescue Poetics. The festival is brought to you with help from my video production company, The Nature Imaginarium, Human Error Publishing, and Score.org. Thank you to our sponsors, our colleagues, all our presenters, and to you for being here. So without further ado, I'd like to present Lise Weil. She's the editor of Dark Matter, Women Witnessing. She was founder and editor of the U.S. Feminist Review Trivia, a journal of ideas from 1982 to 1991, and co-founder of its online offshoot Trivia, Voices of Feminism. Her memoir, In Search of Pure Lust, appeared in 2018 with She Writes Press in the U.S. and Inanna Press in Canada. She lives in Montreal and teaches in Goddard College's Graduate Institute, where she recently helped found a concentration in embodiment studies. And joining Lise today as co-facilitator is her assistant editor, Kristin Flyntz. The two of them will be introducing their readers. Thank you so much.
I just want to say a word about Dark Matter before I introduce the readers. And Dark Matter, I founded it in 2014 because I think, let me just start out by saying to everyone, I know you're all, if you're like all of us, you're having a hard time right now. It's a really difficult moment to be in the world. And I just think it's really great that you came to this. And the fact is, you know, like, I myself think, so why am I spending an hour talking about nature when, or possibly a whole weekend when so much troubling stuff is happening in the world, but it really is connected. And I hope that will come through from what you hear today. I founded Dark Matter almost 10 years ago because I was kind of in a state of despair, mostly about the loss of species and ecocide. And it was a dark matter. And, you know, it's like looking back now, I thought, oh, really? It was dark already then? Because it hasn't gotten better, obviously. But the thing that distinguishes Dark Matter from other journals is that we honor othered, I call them othered forms of knowing, like dreams, visions, communications with non-human beings, communications with non-embodied beings. And we also honor not knowing, which just feels like an important thing to be doing right now. And that's sort of implied in Dark Matter, which is the animating force of the universe, or 85% of it, and the scientists know very little about it. So this particular issue of Dark Matter, Kristin was the assistant editor, and so was Jillian Goslinga. And I really want to shout out to her because it was really a collaboration between the three of us. This particular issue was devoted to the theme of bodies in and out of place. And I'll just quickly read what the questions that these writers were responding to. What brings us into profound relation to place, and what pulls us out in a social world that feels less and less place dependent, and a physical world that's being reconfigured by climate change and habitat loss, where more and more bodies, both human and non-human, are uprooted from their homelands? How do we sustain our connection to physical place? And how does being in profound relation to place change everything between, around, and about us? So I now will introduce our first reader. And the other thing I have to say, I think distinguishes Dark Matter from other journals is the writing is really extraordinary. And I think you'll see that. That's not a fair, I'm sure there's great writing in other journals, but the writing in Dark Matter is pretty fantastic. So our first reader is Anne Bergeron. And Anne is a writer, a teacher, and a healing arts practitioner who lives among the trees in eastern Vermont. She tends gardens, raises chickens for eggs, and Icelandic sheep for wool in an off-grid homestead she built with her husband. her poems and essays appear widely. I'm going to skip all the titles to save time, but just so you know, these people have published widely, and in journals, anthologies, etc. She views writing, teaching, gardening, and fiber arts as joyful, regenerative practices for the earth. Anne.
Thank you. It's a real pleasure to be here. The title of the piece that I'm going to read is called The Night Thunder Called. I inhale, I exhale. Every breath is a consummation with place. There was a moment when I knew this was true. I lived in a one-room cabin for 3 years alone. No phone, no electricity. I walked across fields, then a short path through a hemlock forest to get there. I carried all my supplies on my back. I hauled water from a spring on the hill above me. I snowshoed in winter and lay in tall field grass beneath the starred road of the Milky Way in summer. I walked barefoot, drenched in moonlight. I bled, urinated, and defecated into the soil. A great horned owl flew at me out of the darkness 3 times within inches of my face. I stood mindless, awed, unafraid. The night my life changed, I was reading at the table by the light of the kerosene lamp. The warm June air turned suddenly cold. Thunder rumbled, cracked, then roared. Lightning flashed through the room like a strobe. Rain as loud as clashing cymbals pounded the metal roof. Suddenly, I wanted to feel the storm all over and inside of me. I threw off my jeans and cotton shirt. I pulled the heavy wooden door open and ran outside naked into rain so cold I gasped. I shivered and leapt down the woods path, my feet slipping in mud and over familiar roots, darkness punctuated by repeated flashes of light. At the gate to the pasture, I stopped, closed my eyes, turned my face to the sky, and opened my mouth. I swallowed mouthfuls of rain. As the rain slowed, I ran into the pasture, lifted my arms and twirled and danced and laughed. I lay down and rolled on slippery grass. I let rain pelt my back and legs. My tears soaked into the ground as I smoothed grass with my hands, the hair on my arms and legs tingling. I could no longer feel my body. No part of the storm felt outside of me. In those moments, I knew that lightning, cloud, wet grass, heavy rain, and I were the same being. I was not under the guidance of hallucinogenic plants or fungi or the influence of alcohol. The spell of life had gripped me, and for once, I did not shake myself free. Thunder called me to forget what humans had taught me. That night, my body understood that the risk bigger than my own death by lightning was not responding to that storm's summons with all the power that surged in me. Everything about this experience made sense to me, but I kept it to myself. The year was 1991. I was 26 years old. I could think of no one in my life to tell. The next day, sunlight warmed my face and woke me. My wet hair soaked the pillow. Mud caked to my arms and legs. The bottoms of my feet were raw. Still naked, I felt cleansed and clear, hallowed. Every heartbeat, every breath of wind, every fly buzzing around my head loudly pulsed with life. I spent the day lying by my tiny garden in front of the cabin, spellbound. That evening, I had agreed to care for a friend's dogs while she was away for the night. I drove an hour to her house, took a long walk with her golden retrievers, then curled up on a futon on her screen porch and slept. When I returned home the following afternoon, my neighbor Steve, a rangy, gray-haired farmer, met me at the trailhead to my cabin at the pullout where I parked my car. "Someone was up in your woods last night," he said. "I was down at the barn before bed and saw a light shining through the trees. Someone was walking around up there with a headlamp." I had few visitors and no friends who would drop in unannounced late at night. "Seems odd, Steve," I said. "Maybe it was moonlight reflecting on the cabin windows." But I knew the moon phase. The new crescent had set well before midnight, and my cabin could not be seen through the trees. "I don't mean to scare you," he said, "but I thought you should know." A little tendril of fear sprouted in my belly. Who would creep around at night or know I was away? Had someone seen me out in the field during the storm? On the trail, all the footprints were mine. Inside the cabin, the mason jar of daisies, the copper tea kettle on the wood stove, the sky blue ceramic canisters of flour and rice on the counter were all untouched. Nothing looked missing or out of place. Maybe Steve was wrong. Still, I took my heavy cast iron frying pan up to the bed in the loft with me that night. The wind rose as I lay down, white pine branches knocked onto the roof. The porcupine that liked to chew on my little porch trundled up and cooed. The bar owl sued its 4-syllable call. I imagined the great horned owl in the maple tree guarding his and my place in the forest. I listened for human footsteps. Eventually, I closed my eyes. I slept. The next morning, the charred face of the skillet on the loft floor next to me looked like an intruder. It belonged hanging above the wood stove. I climbed down the ladder with the pan in one hand and hung it on the thick iron hook. I would not live with a weapon in my bed. A woman making love to the land, pressing her body to the ground, feeling the pelting rain, and knowing this as ecstasy, was once not shameful or something to hide. Before millennia of patriarchal repression, before colonization, before the earth and women became things to exploit and desecrate. I remember how white male professors in my literature seminars in the 1980s praised Whitman, Wordsworth, and Keats for making love to the earth. So natural for those guys to see the earth as lover and then make some poems about it. No one killed them for writing about their sensual love of each leaf of grass. That night in the storm, my body remembered the time before women were murdered for the power of their connection to the earth. As I made love to rain, thunder, clouds, and grass without shame and with a tense abandon and pleasure, I felt complete love for myself, love for my love of the earth that birthed me, love for the earth that I will nourish in return with my flesh and bones and teeth and organs when I no longer breathe. Why is that still a little hard to write? Because the history of women who could not live freely as I live flows in my veins. Because in my country at this moment, the rights of women to govern their own bodies are being systematically taken away. I put a birch twig in my mouth and roll it on my tongue, break through to its cambium with my teeth. I lick dew from a new maple leaf on a sapling as wet, silken pasture grass cools my bare feet. Thank you.
Wow, that was wonderful to hear you read that. I've never heard that read before. By the way, I didn't mention that we're going to have a discussion once the readings are done. We're all going to talk, and we'll take questions too if we can. Next reader is Elliot Batzadek, a poet, translator, liturgist, and bookseller who lives in Philadelphia and is the co-leader of Fringes, a feminist, non-Zionist Havurah. Elliot's a recipient of the Leeway Foundation Art and Change Award and attendee at the inaugural conference for Yetzirah, a Hearth for Jewish Poetry. Her poems and translations have been published widely. Her chapbook, The Enkindled Coal of My Tongue, was published in 2017 by Wicked Banshee Press. A chapbook of translations from Israeli lesbian poet Shez, A Necklace of White Pearls, is forthcoming from Moonstone Press. Elliot.
Thank you. Good morning, all. Benediction. In the years that farmers cleared their fields by throwing flames across the nights, half-mile rows of black smoke leached across late autumn days, until the west wind came with a frost and blew the burned soil away. That great prairie wind, pushing leaves and garbage and ash from the river edge of Adams County to well past Terre Haute. That wind that just one time before, my father said, had yielded magic. Come outside now, he rousing me said. The wind all last week has moved the Mississippi flyway to the east. And pointing showed how the old pine just out the door shimmered. The slow beat of a million wings, all aglow, such brilliant orange that the morning star could blush that morning only pink, watching as his familiar lips touched my ear, his family code. The secret is ours, only ours. And he whispered then only one word, monarchs. Then warmed awake, those wings spread wide, each a book of prayers I felt I once could read. Such delight, such despair, I dared not even breathe. So breathless watched them rise from our tree, creatures made of air. So light their launching stirred not a single needle. And so my father's lips and my ear became blessed. And all our years of secreting were made holy, holy, holy ever after by the touch of the great kings who once had rested here.
Now, poetry really needs to be read out loud. That was amazing to listen to that. It was so beautiful. Moving. Thank you, Elliot. Okay. I feel like we should pause after each read. I mean, that was our next reader is Leslie Schwartz. Leslie has published 2 best-selling novels, and one became a film, and a memoir. Her books have been published in 13 languages. Her essays, short stories, and articles have been widely published, and her most recent short story, Gulfoss, just won an award from the Tom Howard John H. Reed Fiction Contest. Schwartz and her husband, Greg Littlewood, are the founders of Listoland Loyable Farm, an artists and writers residency in the West Fjords of Iceland. And we just got to see, Leslie is zooming in from those West Fjords, and she just showed us what it's like outside. It's unbelievable where she lives. I don't know, Leslie, you going to show them a little bit? Is it possible, or we just can't have to do with what we just saw? It's unbelievable.
Yeah, we'll have to see because the snow is coming up the fjord. We'll see.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Maybe.
Comes and goes.
All right.
Okay. Wow. Thank you. It's such an honor and a privilege really to be here. And I want to start by thanking you, Lisa, for your incredible support. And it's just been an amazing experience to publish with Dark Matter. And Kristin, your brilliant and kind-hearted editing was a great experience for me at a really difficult time, as you know. So thank you for that. And I also want to thank you, Liz, for shepherding us through this experience. It's a new one for me. I did just read this, but I did it live. So this is a 3,000-word essay. So I'm only going to read the first 3.5 pages. And I will tell you that it's a love story between me and a mountain lion, and also an explanation of why I left the United States. The day I arrived in Los Angeles from San Francisco in 1991, I was sad and fully unprepared for how weird a place it was. I spent years, too many, at war with LA for all the regular reasons: traffic, pollution, shootings, police helicopters dive bombing our house at night. I would leave often for months at a time to be closer to my heart geography, Northern California, Oregon, Washington, and Wyoming, where I could write in peace, but also feel the wild nature nearby, pushing me to be something better and brighter. I stayed in LA for decades, mostly against my will, but there were a few wonderful reasons to remain: love and children and a home built over 20 years, rooted to the same ground. The quiet walks with my dog in the early morning darkness of Elysian Park, the wintry evenings in Griffith when you actually needed a sweater, Those falcons in May, the bobcats, the summer wildflowers. LA could be so heartbreakingly beautiful. And then there was P22, the world's most famous mountain lion. I know I am not the only one who fell in love with the loneliest cat in LA, yet somehow these small gifts of LA were not enough. My heart never found its place there among the noise and pollution. The journey out and eventually to Iceland, where I now live, was via a small cabin in the woods in the Pacific Northwest. We would use it to get away from the Southland, and every time we pulled out of the woods after a month or two and headed back to LA, I cried. I didn't want to go back. I loved the cabin so much that we kept it and moved to Iceland anyway. In a larger sense, my move to Iceland was probably a move not just from LA, but from the recklessness of California's tension between capitalism and growth and the vanishing natural world. I had been born to a wilder and less inhabited Northern California. I swore I'd never leave the place I called home, where there were still streams you could drink from and a natural world not yet sullied by hordes of tourists. It still pains me that I did leave, or really felt I had to for my sanity. There were other problems too that seemed deeply rooted in American culture and made me increasingly anxious and depressed. Iceland felt like home. What could be better for someone desperate for the wild society of nature than living on a giant windswept rock in the North Atlantic, where fire erupts from the ground and falls freeze into ice sheets over cliffs? Then something happened. On December 17th, 2022, my beloved LA connection P22 died. Sitting in my apartment in Reykjavik, I fell apart. Nothing made me think of Los Angeles as home more than that reclusive cat had while I lived there. P22 was to me a solitary apparition, roaming without benefit of mate or offspring, tagged by wildlife biologists to be studied and evaluated, seen as an only in LA celebrity who was known throughout the world. His most daring and improbable feat was crossing two 10-lane freeways, the 101 and the 405, from the Santa Monica Mountains to his new and final home, Griffith Park. He lived there without a mate and largely alone for the rest of his life, with a fraction of the room he needed for an adequate home range. But P22, who liked to hang out in the sun under the Hollywood sign, was also a majestic puma, born like all mountain lions with remarkable agility. His dexterity and innate cunning, intrinsic qualities of all cougars, may explain why he managed to evade death, crossing the world's largest freeways. In 2016, cameras at the LA Zoo caught him leaping over an 8-foot wall and mauling a sleeping koala to death. Zookeepers decided against policy not to trap and kill P22. Instead, they adapted to his wildness and possibly his celebrity by changing their policy and keeping the zoo animals inside at night. P22, like all mountain lions, was very rarely seen, no small feat, in a park visited by millions of people each year. When I look at pictures of him, I'm struck every time by his regal stature. P22's natural stealth and independence was typical of his species. His hind legs were so strong, he, like most mountain lions, was able to leap 40 feet horizontally and up to 18 feet in the air. He became a symbol to me of enduring strength and power, even under the most difficult circumstances. Sometimes, in my darkest hours, I would think of him and gather my own courage. It can't have been easy living in Griffith Park, though for P22 there were plentiful deer and enough water to stay alive. Space, or in his case, lack of it, was his greatest challenge. It is remarkable that he survived there at all, because mountain lions, as a rule, have the largest home ranges of any mammal in the Americas. 125 square miles is a general estimate for their needs, but 60 square miles will do. Griffith Park, where P22 deteriorated and died, is 6.5 square miles and bordered on every side by freeways and boulevards. It is no place for a lion. At the end of his life, P22 was captured and evaluated after he had attacked 2 domestic dogs. Alarmed by his movements, the biologists who monitored and loved him finally sedated him and brought him in for an examination. Not only did he suffer head trauma and an eye injury from being struck by a car, but he exhibited signs of kidney failure and appeared to have a parasitic skin condition. I am comforted by the love and care the biologists had for him, that they brought him in and away from further depletion and humiliation. I'd heard about his deteriorating state after he was hit by a car, and I often wondered who hit him if they knew they'd just collided with the most famous mountain lion in the world. The driver left the scene. Witnesses said they saw a dark sedan luxury car driving away after striking the puma. And wasn't it just so LA that the beginning of the end of P-22's final passage of time on Earth was instigated by someone hitting him with their luxury car and fleeing the scene? When P-22 was captured, his list of health issues was exhausted and too serious to fix. It was time to say goodbye, and he was humanely euthanized on December 17th, 2022. Miraculously, P-22 did manage to live a long life, somewhere between 12 and 13 years before he was put down. This is perhaps what I love most about him. In spite of it all, he persevered and even outdid himself. The average lifespan for a mountain lion in the wild is 10 years. And I'll stop there. Thank you.
You'll have to go and read her article so that you'll understand what P-22 has to do with Leslie moving to the Western fjords of Iceland, because she deeply identifies with this mountain lion. There was no time for her to read that part. So as you see, these are all really diverse responses to the questions that were posed in the call. And here's yet another very diverse one from Kim Zombik, who writes, as a young girl in Boston, Massachusetts, I was enchanted by words and music. I have made them both the biggest part of my life as a woman. I started writing in 4th grade, and decades and boxes of journals later, I write as if I were going to sing everything. Well, I know Kim first and foremost as a singer, an amazing singer. Words have to feel right in my mouth because, in fact, I do end up singing most of what I write. Now living in Montreal, Quebec, I teach yoga, meditation, and tour yearly with my band, Silverfest.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you all for being here today. And thank you, Lisa, for your deep encouragement. My piece is called In the Name of So Many. Last week on YouTube, I watched a video taken from a security camera in a fast food restaurant somewhere in New Jersey. Looked like it might have been summertime, the way the light shone along the floor and tables. In the video, you see a lean Black woman with a sleeveless top and long blonde extensions bringing her tray of food to the table on the left side of the screen. As she goes to sit, a young Black woman comes in wearing her hair cap and a coat and heads to the counter. Even though you can't see her face, you can tell she's exhausted as she leans in. Since COVID, most cash register areas are still protected by a wall of plexiglass, so I can't really tell what the clerk is doing. The plexi is all gloss and reflection. The young Black woman backs away from the counter to plop into a seat at the table at the right side of the screen, clearly worn out. The blonde Black woman is leaning and looking over at her. I had the volume off and was watching the closed caption text sputtering across the bottom of the YouTube screen, which is about a 1-inch by 2-inch slice of movement and color at the top of the phone screen. The words were tiny and slow. The exhausted woman opens her coat to hand a balled up brown bath towel to the other, who is now standing close and has sanitized her hands with wipes from her purse. She returns to her seat and unwraps a baby. Unwraps a baby. The other woman unwraps a baby, new, brand, newborn, new umbilical cord hanging down to the restaurant floor. A stranger unwraps a baby. Young mama stands up, leans over the blonde stranger and her new baby. I can tell both women are sharing a moment of some kind, but their words are not what the caption is reporting. Young mama turns to the door, the camera. There's blood on her pants and her t-shirt says, "Let me sleep." Young mama leaves, new baby, new umbilical cord hanging. Young mama leaves, baby stays. Stranger taking care, stranger taking care. Let that poor young mama go to sleep. Her face, under the bright light, has frozen hysteria smeared all across it. The new baby nearly fallen out the balled up brown towel, skin delicate and unswaddled. Young mama in no kind of shape to wrap the wee one in clothes or in attention of any kind. She's just trying not to die. Just trying not to die. She didn't kill the baby, no, she had hope. Young mama had hope, she got help. Brand new baby got help. Every place is some place to be loving. Stranger taking care, stranger taking care. The young woman with her blonde braids pulled back, her mouth making cooing shapes to the baby, puts the oxygen mask on the tiny face when the medics come. Little baby had been having a hard time. Little baby having a hard time breathing. Birth shock and being left made her breathless. Birth shock and being left made her breathless. She just trying not to die. New baby trying not to die. Strangers taking care. Strangers taking care. The boyfriend of the blonde black woman who had arrived just before the medics. The woman holding this new starling. He took a video of the baby's first cries. Starling's tears. Baby crying, man crying, baby crying, grown man crying. Wouldn't you know, he'd been left when he was a newborn too. Strangers taking care, strangers taking care, strangers taking care.
Wow, thank you, Kim. That was, wow. That has a whole, from what everything we're going through right now, it's feeling like that poem really works on a lot of levels. Thank you. Our last reader is Shante Sojourn Zenith. Shante is an earth poet, edge weaver, whose practice weaves together learnings from somatics, animism, constellations, poetics, field perception, clowning, grief ritual, and systems intelligence. Her people are Celtic, Norse, Ashkenazi, and Slavic. She lives in Minnesota on the ancestral homelands of the Dakota people, where she learns from the Mississippi River, turtles, maitake mushroom, and many other nature beings. Okay.
Our nervous systems can limit our ability to feel love as the primordial foundation of reality. How can we begin to sense the feeling of that support again? I've been trying to gesture towards a felt sense of something which the domination structures don't think of as real. The feeling of our embodied existence being utterly supported and welcomed here. What if this feeling was the foundation? I remember a dream that I had years ago, in which I met an old woman who took out a fishing rod and threw it out onto the land. "You have the same look as me," she said. "What are you doing?" I tell her, "I'm learning to come back into my own aliveness in my body. Because through allowing myself to be filled with aliveness, I can find the deeper structure which will allow me to shift the structures of the culture, which deny body through their mass nature and speed. When I come back to the ground of my own body, then I can speak to the body of the culture, body to body, and I can affect the structure. But as I've been peeling away layers and trying to come back to my core, my old survival strategies have been doing everything they can to stop it. So I've had autoimmune things come up. I've had breakdowns. The old woman reels in her fishing rod and hands me the lizard that she has caught. The lizard tries to suck on my finger. The woman says, "He's trying to find the rhythm." The lizard leaves my finger and starts jumping from person to person. As I wake up from the dream, I realize it's harmonics. My work is harmonics. On a nervous system level, I often speak of the nuanced wave as a state of energetic attunement through which our organisms can sense into the holding of a wider earth rhythm. This wider body rhythm becomes a container, a portal place into a deeper flow, what jazz musicians call being in the pocket. It is the space where improvisational agency is possible, as we're perceiving how our system is responding to the touch of the other systems around us. The air is thick with resonance as I pause. Deep inside of me, underneath all the layers of human shaping, I feel myself seen by this ancient landscape as also elemental, an interwoven organism guided by polyrhythmic impulses of sound. From the support of gravity, from the dreaming of the land, here I tune my listening towards the field of vibrating harmony, the interweaving threads of relationship moving between my body and the earth. Then, from that place of presence, I listen for the song. Once, my ancestors too would sing the world. From the Sami yoiking tradition of Northern Europe, singing the essences of beings, to the Celtic practice of keening, honoring the dead with spontaneous wails. Ecological culture ruptures when these cultural rituals for embodied expression are not able to be passed on to the next generation, leaving existential emotions with no way to be metabolized by wider elemental forces. Residual survival energies begin to accumulate in individual bodies who no longer know how to sing the webbing of relationships, over time shaping a culture based on a pervasive sense of threat, dissociated from an awareness of ecological belonging. The current emphasis on trauma healing within colonial culture comes from this perceptual experience that there is a barrier between us and the felt sense of support. The support is sensed as unreachable, while all the time it's actually the closest in, still in our own bodies, in our bones, and our primordial relationship to gravity, in the fluid that shapes us, and in the mycelial connective tissue that holds the emotion when it's too much for us to sense into alone. The way back into relationship is to attune to this webbing, to find the resonance between our bodies and the wider body of the earth. Tuning into this field intelligence, I listen for the threads of liquid sound. There is a place where my ancestors are still singing. I listen for where my center resonates in this web of song.
That was the perfect place to end. Wow, there's some damn good stuff in this issue. This was amazing to listen to, even though I've read these pieces so many times. Well, so what I thought was, how much time do we have? 20 minutes, a little less, but we've already had a conversation, because one of the things we do at Dark Matter, another thing that distinguishes Dark Matter from other journals, is just before the issue comes out, I share the writings with the contributors and we have a conversation. So we've all already met each other, read each other's work, except Leslie couldn't make it because of the time difference. But we already know each other's work and had one conversation, but I'm just wondering if other stuff came up this time when you listened to each other, anything that jumped out at you that you want to say?
Well, I was struck by the resonance of what Shantae was talking about, coming into this kind of place of connectivity on a more energetic level, and then finding that place of connectivity in all the pieces that I heard, whether it was connecting with a monarch butterfly, two women in a little restaurant, a mountain lion in Los Angeles. I just felt like that all of what was being woven was about coming into understanding our relationship to the systems that are around us, as well as our connection to our own. And that relationship is what's really vital and probably what is going to move us through any difficult time, or has always moved us through difficult times, is that capacity to maintain connection with not only ourselves, but the rest of the systems around us, and humans and animals and plants, insects.
I think today, hearing these, I heard so much about ancestors, human, animal, the earth itself, both the ones that we have and kind of the ones that we're missing. Like that young woman, that restaurant should have had a mama and a grandmama who was taking care of her. But systems of oppression destroy family and connection. And just hearing that so profoundly, the ways that we're connected back through time, and we need that because the future is so unsteady right now.
And in connection with that, I kept hearing about home, the dislodging from home, and how when there is no home, and the fast food restaurant where the baby is deposited, when there is no home, how do we root down, which is what Shantae speaks to so beautifully. I mean, how all of us in one way or another have been ripped away from home, and how do we then find home? What is the title of your piece again, Shantae? I just want to feel that I belong. Yeah.
What's interesting is actually throughout really hearing everything today too, this idea of rewilding is what was kind of playing in my head, and all the different ways that we do that, bringing kind of seeking at base really to like embody these things. And we find that through different ways, whether we have like a connection to a mountain lion in the city, or or lying out under thunder, and also like in the piece that I wrote too, the rewilding, well, the wildness of like, okay, that young girl just had a baby somewhere around the corner, and that's wild. You know what I mean? And here we are. This, I guess, also this idea of home. It's like I'm writing that also to somehow make a connection to, it's not always ideal, but home is where you are. Home is where you are also, so that we don't become an enemy of what it is that we've been given. There's a fine line to that, of course, right? Not everything is great, but at the same time, there's like some of the depth of the work is like, this is what I've been given. What can I make from this? That home is my effort. That home is my attention. That home is knowing already that I belong, in a way that's really kind of probably more, I guess, spiritual than anything else.
I think as I'm listening to everyone talk, and what I feel the connection and the connectivity between all of us. We're talking about home and homelessness in different ways, but it's also the diversity of the way we all bring a different story about this to the table. And to me, it's the beauty and the power of literature and writing in such a fractured world that we're all experiencing right now, that we can come to the table here with our own voices and our own genre and our own way of expressing on a single topic and show that difference and yet feel connected. And to me, I mean, that is why writing, poetry, listening to fiction, all of it has always given me hope, because it's a forum that we can be ourselves, be unique, be different, be diverse, and yet still find something that holds the center. And that's where I find hope.
Yeah. I guess I also just want, that was beautiful, but I just also was struck this time when Anne read too about the body. I mean, without our bodies, it's hard to feel at home. And how in the US right now, many women have been robbed of the feeling of being okay in our bodies because of the legislation that's, and the policies. That's, that felt like an important note to strike at this moment. Yeah. Obviously connects with Kim's. Because, a lot of women are giving birth when they're not ready, not wanting it. So I noticed I don't know if we're supposed to be taking questions, because if not, I will ask Kristin to say something, because Kristin always has something to say and waits there silently until I call on her.
Lisa and Jillian and I spent a lot of time with these pieces, but I was not prepared for how moved I would be to hear each of you read them aloud in your own voices. I mean, the beauty and the wisdom and the depth of them was just so amplified, and I want to thank you for bringing me into my heart. I feel like I haven't been there in a while. It's been a rough couple of months, as we all know. So thank you for that. On that note, in Anne's piece, she uses the word hallowed, and Eliot uses the words blessed and holy, holy, holy. And I think what I was hearing in each of the pieces is the sacredness of these relationships between woman and earth, body and earth, woman and baby, woman and mountain lion, woman and her ancestors, woman and maitake mushroom, and everyone that shares the ecosystem with us. And to bring to life the sanctity of life in so many different ways, I just felt like it was a very powerful reminder, particularly with what's going on in other parts of the world, of the sanctity of every life, and how porous and permeable our bodies can be to recognize these moments of sacredness. Yeah, thank you all.
Thank you. We do have one question/comment in the Q&A from Andrea, and it says, can the dark matter writers' voices be heard as so beautifully today in future issues? This is so beautiful, powerful to hear the voices. So echoing what Kristin just said.
Yeah, that's a good point. We should. I mean, all the pieces, just hearing them read aloud was so different. Yeah, I don't know how we'll do that, but we'll try. So I thought, unless you have other things to say, Leslie, what's it looking like outside there?
Okay, I'll give it a shot. I have to hold on to my computer really tight because the wind is wild, but let me also unblur.
Rewilding. I mean, I just think.
Right. Okay, so I'm gonna remember to background. Okay, so here we go. Let me give it a shot. God, I could just see my computer going flying into the fjord, but I'll hold on. The door is being pushed by the wind. Okay.
And this woman who moved from LA. Just keep that in mind.
This is part of the land. At the end of this spit of land, it actually goes around into a valley where there's 1,000-year-old ruins from the Vikings, and they're farming. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes.
And then this is it's one of the deepest fjords in the Westfjords, which is why we have the whales come through.
Oh.
And you can't see me now, the wind is coming from the north, but there's the tallest waterfall, the biggest waterfall in Iceland is just at the end of the fjord over there. So that's it. I don't know. I'm hoping for something. I'm going to go back inside. It's really cold out here.
Well, I think you convinced us all that we need to take a trip to Iceland sooner than later.
Yeah, maybe it's your artist residency.
Oh, that was so I got to walk the dog after this too. We'll see how that goes.
Wow. So we still have some time if anyone wants to say anything. It just feels like it's hard to say one little thing.
I would just say, like, the second half of the journal, it's dark matter women witnessing.
Yeah.
And it's that witnessing, because there's so much in the world that's so beautiful and so much that's so broken right now that no one of us could possibly see it all or talk about it all. So that sense of, each of us is witnessing the thing that we need to be alive to witness. And then it's that multiplicity of it that makes it so powerful. I don't know if I could bear to see all of this on my own.
Yes, that's exactly. Yeah, thanks for saying that, Elliot. Because that's another reason why I wanted this journal. I wanted community. That's why I love to have these conversations afterwards and get to know the contributors, because then it becomes more bearable to witness the unbearable, which is what we're all doing when we're witnessing this dark matter, whatever it is. Doesn't get any less bearable, but the fact that there's more people doing it together really, really makes a difference.
Mm-hmm.
Dante, you haven't said anything. Do you have to say anything?
I was just thinking about that, the piece around embodied expression and how creativity and ritual can alchemize or make space for the transformation of some of these things. And just all of the territory that is kind of underneath the level of the cognitive or the level of words that then can be met and brought back up differently into words. Yeah.
I wish, Shante, that you could do a ritual to close us out. We have like 2 minutes, like a drumming or something. I don't know. Do you have a ritual to close us out?
The absolute kind of basic somatic practice, which I learned from my teacher Larissa Call, is just that feeling of noticing the connection between your body and the earth, your relationship to gravity, and just the sense of how your body is being held by this wider body, that's a connection that's always happening. And feeling the sense that the earth is also holding you and witnessing you, the particular land body that you're with, the particular ecosystem. That right there in that point of contact, there's already a relationship, there's already a mutuality that's available, can be returned to, and that can also be kind of an invitation for slowing down and just really feeling that your body is held.
Thank you, Shante. Thank you, everyone.